places. Now, for example, talking to those different teams and working with the different teams, that's a whole skill set in itself. In terms of earlier this morning, I don't know if were any of you in CMO's talk this morning about agile working and like how you talk to them and what success and things is. So in terms of if you're working with tech teams, you have to be able to understand business processes in terms of project management. You have to have a good understanding of writing things like Jira tickets, whichever system you have, and you've got to get this view of, right, they have this strict criteria of how you build a feature. And you actually have to get them that mindset in order to write a Jira ticket and to write, this is the acceptance criteria for analytics for this ticket. So that's a skill that I can see more and more analysts needing in the future, this ability to work with tech teams in their world. And then simultaneously, you've got to go to the business stakeholders and take your insights and say, right, this is how this translates, this is how it translates into actions for the business. And that's more of the sort of traditional stuff that a lot of us will be comfortable with, is saying, oh, this is this action, but actually that ability to work, to communicate with different teams in their own worlds, I see as being the kind of key development at the moment. So yeah, does anybody have any opinions on that? I think at this point people can start adding in.
So you're saying that soft skills is where things are is what's needed for the next 2 years?
Sort of, in that if you can't communicate with these teams, you're not going to go very far. That actually to learn those things, you can call them soft skills, but effectively they're the skills you need. The ability to do a regression analysis is great, but if you can't then explain that to your business stakeholders of why that's important, at the same time as teach somebody else how to do it, and actually be able to do it on a statistical level, they're soft skills, but they are necessary, and they're essential for analytics moving forward.
Cool. So to build the perfect analyst for 2019, to build the perfect analyst for 2019, they need to be able to communicate. That's probably that's a skill set for you. Does anyone else have like a skill set that they think would be really relevant?
You already touched upon it actually, and that's obviously things like machine learning and AI are progressing very quickly, and also things like data stitching and processes that allow things to come together more easily. And until now, analysts have been very actively involved in doing that, and that will move away because it will become more automated and more independent, and you will need to cover the breadth of basically understanding the marketer who's saying, I need to know how to track this, to the technical side of saying, how does this actually get implemented in the first place? The data side of collection will become a lot more automated, and that's good, because no one really likes to deal with the dirty stuff. But that breadth that you talked about of having the technical understanding, but at the same time the business analysis or those skills of requirements engineering even, I think that range is going to become much more important for someone in our role. Because unless you want that role to be split into two people, where then you work as a team, that's also an option. But I think as an analyst, you can profit from having that breadth.
Sounds like business analysis, and it's know what's going on around you.
It is, which is what makes our role so rare, in the fact that breadth, you don't have that in a lot of roles today in jobs per se. You have a developer, his stack is a development stack. He doesn't need to understand, for example, if he's a front-end developer, he doesn't need to understand back-end technologies. But if he does, it's a huge advantage for him because he works way better with the back-end team. And then you see that happening. But then, of course, there's a limit. You can be a generalist and be good at everything, or you can be good at one specific thing. And we're trying to do sort of mesh it both.
And I think as well it comes down to what you want. So if you can be very good at analytics and you can be very good at statistics and machine learning and those things, and if that's what you really enjoy, you potentially don't need to learn the other things because I'm sure you can make a very good living doing that, as long as you keep up to date with the latest in recommendations in machine learning, and as long as you keep up to date with that, you can still do that. But if you might then find that you can't go down the other routes quite as easily. And the way I see it in terms of my career, it's almost like you become a product owner for analytics. You are your own biggest stakeholder, you're the product owner for analytics, and as a result you have to talk to all the other product owners in their areas. But that's,
That's actually really nice. So almost becoming a product owner for analytics, and you're saying that actually part of the role, this perfect analyst that we're going to build, needs to be able to take translate business requirements into physical briefs, tickets.
Absolutely.
So doing some of that business analyst type of work.
And do the tagging legwork that's necessary if there is legwork to be done. I mean, the classic scenario is marketing wants to run a new campaign. But for that, you need to identify on your site someone's going to get targeted with some on-site thing. You need to identify whether they're already a user of your software or not. And how do you do that on your website if they're not connected with your backend system? You need data layer variable, whatever. And so marketing will tell you, I want the pop-up to be shown for everyone who doesn't already have a login to our system. And you go, how are we going to do that? And you talk into the backend and you discuss the actual technical implications, and then you end up saying, we have a data layer variable that says trial or customer, for example.
So is that some of the stuff that you're doing at the moment?
Yes.
And so you think actually in 2 years that'll still be there and there'll still be very much
Absolutely.
same?
Absolutely.
Anyone,
Hasn't changed for 2 years.
anyone agree, disagree?
Yeah, I think there's two pieces to it which are kind of reiterating the points there. One is translation, one is strategy. The translation is being able to go, as you say, between understanding the detail of it, being able to give that back to the business in a way that everybody else understands, key stakeholders from C-level all the way down to kind of analysts and below. And then the other bit is the strategy of understanding the bigger picture, how everything links together. Not just web analytics is here, but obviously it's not siloed anymore. It's how does that fit into your marketing plan? How does that fit into the longer and the short-term goals within that as well? So that strategy aspect is going to be big as well.
So the strategy side, the product ownership, translating requirements. This sounds like a very multi-talented individual. I don't know. Is it one person? Huh?
Oh, swear jar. Yeah.
What's the swear word?
Yeah, you can't say unicorns.
Why can't you say unicorn?
Because it's a swear word.
Okay, but potentially, just remember, it's always a goal, and we should always have goals as analysts. So that's actually, maybe from someone over here, is there another thing that we want to put into this perfect analyst for 2019?
I would say just practice at making complex things really, really simple, and speaking and presenting with confidence as well, because you can have the best ideas, but if you don't portray it well, nobody will buy into it. So it's something that you need to practice and just get good at.
So how would you define that? Would you say was that public speaking? Was it
Yeah.
presentation?
Yeah. Both.
It's almost translation back into business language.
Yeah,
So translate the business language into tech and analytics language. And you have to translate it back out.
Another area that I would say that analysts need to get better at is kind of understanding the businesses they're working with, whether that's the UX things, or whether that's what the actual business strategy is, how the product, what is the aim of the product, what is that side of things. Some people do it very, very well, but actually, going back to when I said you're sort of the product owner of the analytics, and you're your own biggest stakeholder, when it comes to doing things like requirements gathering, for example, if you don't have a good understanding of the product, or almost as good an understanding of the product as the people designing it, you're not going to understand the requirements the right way, because quite often the requirements you get back will be things like, I want to see visitors to X, and that's not a requirement, that's nothing to do with tagging, that's what should come out of analytics automatically. So in many ways, in analytics you have the second best understanding of the product, straight after the product owners. You have the second best understanding of UX after your UX designers, second best digital marketing, and you are the second best at pretty much all of those things in the company beyond the people who have it as a single specialism. And that can be quite a daunting prospect. That when it comes to UX, you should be able to look at it and be like, this isn't working, maybe it's because of that, and then you can take that to the UX people.
So you're saying analysts should be second best?
Yeah.
That's the key thing.
But also, you're an enabler and a server. You're not like I attended like a big offsite, so I've just taken on a new role where I've become sort of head of product performance for 12 different products, basically, which include back-end, middleware, front-end of an API, front-end of 2 different websites, back-end of a supplier website, and a front-end, just 1,000 million horrible things. What I really kind of thought was the way I wanted to describe myself to the 12 product managers I just inherited was, I'm like, you give me your car and I'll do an MOT and I'll give it back to you, but I can't drive it. You have to drive the car, you give me the keys, and while it's on the lot I can tinker and play with the oil and stuff and improve the performance. But I can't legally drive it, only you can. I have to give you back the car and give you back the keys.
So can you turn that into a wonderful property, characteristic, skill for this amazing...
Skill. Realising that your job is enablement. It's product enablement through data.
So having skills to be able to share skills with others, be able to teach. What is it? How would you describe it? Anyone help? If they agree, disagree.
There's definitely an education side to that. I would say educating them how to potentially look at the data.
Is it an evangelist?
A little bit, yeah. A little bit. Like, I've inherited a bunch of employees who thought, oh, it never would have occurred to me to give product managers data. I was like, why not? And they're like, well, they probably just won't use it. I was like, yeah, but if you give them the right data at the right detail and tell them how to use it, and if you give them just a login to the back end of your analytics solution, they'll go, just not know what to say. So, I don't know. Distill that into like 4 words, Grant, and you'll somehow.
It's not the Grand Show. I mean, does anyone else have ideas? Just remember, we should try and find a consensus.
I've got one in that. So, leadership, not necessarily in the form of leading the team, but a quality of leadership so far as being able to drive initiatives, being able to drive a lot of what comes out of your insight. So, very often you kind of, in organisations, you're a consumer of people's requests, and then you get it, and then obviously without that you get an output. But actually driving that and being able to persuade stakeholders or clients in terms of taking your ideas on board and actually following through, I think is a quality necessary for today's analysts.
So can you shorten that? Something very. How would you say what it is? Is it leader? Or what is it?
I think it's a leadership quality. I think it is, and I say that with not necessarily leading a team, as I say, but certainly leading your ideas, leading your insights, being able to, as I say, persuade your stakeholders to take on the insights that you've been able to share.
I've seen like one of the teams I work with have implemented the first A/B test that they've done on a particular site, and they and I helped actually do the implementation, optimize, and they did literally everything that you should do when you're running an A/B test. They didn't plan how long it was going to run for. They didn't properly define what pages it was going to run on. They didn't have a desired uplift.
Yeah.
They ended it before the end time that they had agreed on. They had a predetermined thing. They did everything wrong, and I knew that they were doing everything wrong, but I didn't tell them because.
Especially fail fast.
I couldn't be bothered. That's the truth. But I had too much everyone, and to go through all of those points that I just said and explain to someone who are experienced A/B testers or CRO people why you need to do all that, they're going to completely zone out. They think I'm bollocking them, and they're not going to listen to me. So it's not worth the time and effort. But that's not the right way. I should have thought about it. I should have actually gone to them and gone, you should do it this way, and you can actually get much more benefit out of it if you do it this way. I think a lot of times our lists, like you say, you consume requests a lot, and we've all got a lot of work on. We've all got, as we said, we've all got such a wide range of tasks. It's like sometimes you're like, I don't know what it is. I know it's crap, but fuck it, I'll do it. And you probably should not do that. You need to drive them to. I think you need to drive people to ask better questions. Because if you don't get them to drive.
Pulling it back, what characteristic would you add to this person? It's hard, isn't it?
Inquisitiveness.
Inquisitive.
Courage. You've got to have courage to.
Yeah, you do. Yeah. Because if the request comes in from your MD, and in your out of art, it's a bullshit request.
The ability to say no.
Yeah.
But by the way, I'll share this all the stuff I'm writing down notes. I'll share and to everyone. So I'll put it on Twitter or either way. So being inquisitive, and actually one of the things that you said was about almost establishing you, because you knew the best practice, didn't you? For what they should.
I had an idea. I'm not a split testing person myself, but I had a rough idea.
So do you think maybe that's another characteristic, that the person who is this data analyst needs to almost be like the holder of best practices, like is there to kind of establish those best practices?
No, I don't think a person should hold that. I think you should have best practice for whatever your team is. Like for UX and UI, like our design team won't take take a website change request in unless there's a user story. Like that's a discipline of their team and of our business. Like that's best practice. That's not one person's. I mean, maybe it's a project manager's job, but I don't think you can lump that on one person's shoulders. Personally.
So actually, me saying that we need one person in the future is that completely is that an impossibility?
I only did this exercise not long ago. Actually, I identified all the different types of, and we were looking to recruit another analyst, and we wrote out all the different types of analysts, from data scientists or data engineer or web analyst or marketing analyst or business intelligence analyst and all that sort of stuff. And they all do slightly different things. They all use different tools. And they all have slightly different skills. Now, obviously, it is possible that you can be a web analytics person and into CRO or split testing as well, or whatever. But there are, I think, very defined data specialisms and analytics specialisms that all require slightly different skills, slightly different experience and knowledge. So it's like anything. You want to achieve or do something, you need to have the right tools for it. You want to do a particular thing or make your business better through whatever, you should have the right person for it. I think as I found out when I did that exercise, to have one person who can be your data engineer and your analyst and your front-end web, GTM tracking and data scientist and your CRO and it's not possible. It's the word of mouth, I would say.
It's true. I want to do really great analytics. Funny enough, I really like analytics. It's why I'm here. Now, a single person can do good analytics, and you need a breadth of skills to do really good analytics. But if you want to do really great analytics, you do need a breadth of skills that generally one person doesn't have. I tend to work in really big companies, so almost always there's some level of either data lake or data warehouse involved, and visualization tools, as well as your kind of standard analytics packages. Now, very rarely would you ever get someone who can do your standard analytics tagging and tag up the features all the way through the analytics, into the ETL, into the database, into the visualization tools, and then present it back to stakeholders. That's generally not one person, just because there isn't enough hours in the day. Even if you had found somebody who had all of those specialisms, firstly, they're unlikely specialisms, they're like to be generalists.
Or be really expensive.
Well, yeah.
I wish I was really expensive.
But basically, you need these skills, and actually if you get someone who's really good with databases and visualization, and if that's what they do and they're really good at it, that's one person, and then the tagging and maybe analytics might be another person. And it's just building up a team with the right sets of skills. And I think where I want to get to is actually understanding what are the sets of skills I need. So from my point of view, it's having an understanding of what are the gaps in the team, what are the gaps that actually need filling, just to do this kind of great analytics layer.
It's not necessarily a skill that you can have in a person, but being able to educate the business as well. Because if you're educating the rest of the business, you say to be able to answer those questions or ask the right questions, then it helps the role of the more modern 2019 analyst in that they're getting the right questions from the rest of the business, which makes their role easier.
One of the things, has anyone heard of the term Center of Excellence?
Yes.
Yeah. Anyone do that? I'm hearing some of the terminologies, and actually it's the same things that they were talking about at Tesco, ages back, saying, almost people building out sort of like standard sort of recipes for what the right things are, and then kind of are using them and evangelizing them within organizations. It sounds like that's kind of one of the angles that person is going to be for that best analyst would be there. But what sort of, I think we've identified some skills, and we've identified that actually the person is maybe multiple people. Is there any sort of other must-have skills or anything else that needs to be there in order to be able to not just be a good web analyst, but to actually be like at the top, so have people like looking and saying, yeah, these guys are doing a bang-up job?
I feel that in the last few years, especially specifically in web analytics, a lot of the job of being a web analyst isn't actually doing analysis. It's GTM, or it's account configuration, or it's auditing, or it's all the other technical stuff, and writing JavaScript variables and all that sort of stuff. And that's all really, really important, because collection is, I think, the most important bit. But as someone who I used to working SEO, and used to work in off-page, and then became an analyst. When you're a junior analyst, you're just clicking download report, create a graph, send on. You're not actually doing analysis, you're doing reporting. And then as you get a better, more experienced as an analyst, you start to take on technical stuff. still you're not really doing any analysis either. You're tracking and reporting. So for me personally, I have to get better at being an analyst. So I'm learning hard, doing some other stuff as well. And I think there's a lot of people like me who have been junior analysts and report builders and or learn tracking or something. And I think that if you come from business analytics or general analytics, it's fully different. But I think in web analytics specifically, I think a lot of people who are currently in the market have to get better at doing analysis. I think.
So actually having analysis skills, and actually also you mentioned technical skills. You guys over there, I mean, what do you guys think about it? Do you have to be technical? Do you have to have those analysis skills? Is that what's your sort of take on it? No?
From a point of view,
Sorry, I'm being bad, I'm being a bully, I'm so sorry. I want to try and obviously get lots of people a chance to speak.
from a developer point of view, I think it's necessary to know about the knowledge, to have knowledge about the platform you're gonna analyze. Because most of the people do web analytics, but for example, they jump into mobile analytics and that stuff, and they don't know exactly how Android or iOS or what works. And we had problems because of that, because do that. No, we cannot do it in the same way. So it is necessary to know about the platform you're gonna work with.
Amazing. I think that's a really good take on it. Back to that analysis thing. Maybe I can ask this because obviously it sounds like analysis will still be very important in the next few years. Is that a consensus? Yeah.
Well, especially in implementation. Like if you have, like as you said, you can have a report that fits, chart thing, and you have a chart from that. Being able to tell them what that chart actually means is already value. You have to bring that value out of the data that you're analyzing. Even if the analysis is very simple, it's, well, if we do this, you will fail. Whatever.
So, yeah, your conversion rate's gone up, either your traffic's gone down, or your sales
Absolutely.
gone up. That's really simplistic, but it's still high value.
Absolutely. And I think that's the takeaway for me is that you have to be able to interpret that the analysis and that value.
So I think there's more point with the interpretation, but also kind of spotting the opportunity as well, right? So bottom line is it going to make more money? Am I going to get more customers, etc.? And presenting that opportunity, or at least filtering out the real opportunity from just the insight is going to be another key thing as well.
That's a really interesting. So basically, you're saying that actually, do you think that the analysis? Am I understanding this correctly? That you're saying that the analysis that you're going to be doing in the future will be different from the analysis you're doing today?
I don't think necessarily be different, but I think there has to be a focus on there's insights. So the organisation I work in, there's insights, all day long. There's people kind of giving out insights, but there's very little kind of identifying the actual key opportunity, right? Because we might say, right, that's a piece of insight, great, good to know, tick. But in terms of what you can do with it, and I didn't want to use a swear word, but actionable insights is one of them. It is one of them, and so spotting that opportunity, I don't think we're getting enough time as analysts to do the analysis, interpret the analysis, but also what can I actually give to my stakeholders that will actually benefit the bottom line.
It's interpreting it and relating it back to the business. That's the human element.
There's a really old
computers can get to a point where they can do analysis up to a certain extent, but they won't be able to do that relation back to the business.
Absolutely.
To be able to drive actions.
But on that, then there's certain softer skills as well that you need to have. Like you need to be resilient, right? So you need to have patience because you're explaining complex things to people who won't get it, and they don't have the time. So you just need to have that patience and resilience as well. So
there's a really, really old article by Avinash where he says like that one.
Not this session.
I think it was last time. No,
It should be every time.
Also, it was crossed out. It was a pleasure to see that.
Anyway, it was like I can't remember the examples format, but it was like a junior analyst sort of tells you what's happened, someone else will tell you why, but then the better analyst will not only then say you should then do this, but then they'll then say if you do this, you will have X more amount of revenue. Because like you said, the sort of CEO or C-suite level person you might be talking to will be completely zoned out until you say, if you do this, you'll make 30 grand more this month.
Or you won't lose.
Yes.
those grand this month.
So
Fear of missing out is way worse.
FOMO.
Right? So
I find myself not doing that. Never.
It's hard
Because
to actually
I don't have the
life.
because I don't have the confidence in my analysis to be confident in saying that to someone. Because I can't confidently say from my analysis that I've done that you will make X amount more money. So I
They
can't
will
say it to
hold,
you.
even if you're 100% confident in your analysis, I'm not so sure you should always say that because they'll hold you to that afterwards.
Yes.
That's my situation.
Never deal with
I have
certainties.
100% confidence in the analysis. I'm not going to tell them they're going to make 20 grand.
See, that reminds me to one thing. I used to have a manager years ago who the one thing that she said was something I needed to do was make sure I inspired confidence in the data. So actually, the ability to inspire confidence in what you're in the data itself is something that sometimes people forget. Is you can't go in there and be like, well, I think this might happen, or you have to be confident in your own analysis when you deliver it. Even if you don't quote the revenue figures, that's absolutely fine. But you actually have to inspire confidence that the data is, your analysis is correct, the data is right.
you have to be inspiring, full stop.
Yeah.
Guys, sorry to cut everyone short. It actually sounds like we could probably go on for probably a little bit longer, and actually maybe we can make it up in the pub. But one of the things I'll do is the only reason I'm doing this thing is I want to kind of get canvas for opinions, and actually I want to try and share some of the findings in a future MeasureCamp talk. I've set up a little survey, Google form. I'm not going to use emails for anything else, barring just to share the results if we get enough people to give us feedback. If you guys go to bit.ly/data2019 and fill in things, I'd really appreciate it. Share it to as many people as you can. And I'm doing a thing, I'm giving away like 20 or 30 quid's worth of it. I'm trying to get some of the sponsors to kick in a bit more. But then they want to label it, and I was like, no, it's literally, no one will have the emails. The emails will be thrown away as soon as we've done. And it's just to capture stuff that I can share back to you guys in the future, hopefully MeasureCamp talk. And obviously I'll email all my notes as well, and I'll to everyone who fills that in as well. So appreciate your help.
Tag us in anything and we'll retweet it as well.
Oh, thank you.
Of course.
Amazing. Thank you so much for contributing and talking. And sorry I bullied you guys a little bit.
No, you're not.
No, I am getting sorry. I felt really bad. Sorry.